Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. There's a lot of talk in Formula 1 circles about new teams vying for a spot on the grid. It has been a while since we've had new teams. Aston Martin replaced Racing Point, who in turn replaced Force India, but beneath the green of the Aston Martin is a layer of pink and a faded Indian flag, so they're not new, just a nice paint job. AlphaTauri replaced Toro Rosso, but this is even more shallow and is just a name change to promote Red Bull's fashion brand. Why does an energy drink company catering to teenage psychos need a fashion brand? I don't know, probably fascism. The last new team on the grid was Haas, who joined the grid 7 years ago and have gone from midfield to bottom of the table and back and forth over their short history in Formula 1. Before that, there was the disastrous entries for Caterham, Manor and HRT, all of which had progressively shorter lifespans. Those three teams were chosen from a veritable pool of unsustainable entries made for the 2010 season. The likes of Lola, ProDrive, ART, Supernova, Dams, Carlin, Durango and others have tried and failed to join the grid. And ask US F1 how easy it is to survive in Formula 1. They were barely conceived before they bit the dust. We never got to see Jose Maria Lopez in F1. So with a whole new cast making noises about starting a Formula 1 team, let's have a look at some of the possibilities for 2026. Make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments who you think will be successful and who you would like to see. Porsche and Audi. Let's start with the most obvious ones. Porsche and Audi have been sniffing around the grid like an abandoned dog looking for a new home for about a year now. And it is all but confirmed Audi will be teaming with Sauber in 2026, displacing Alfa Romeo, but the German brand will be debuting in Formula 1. As for Porsche, a deal with Red Bull fell through, but their name is still being put forward. I believe their plan will be to join another team still, although options are limited. Haas Porsche, anyone? I think somehow that is the most likely option, given Porsche's team up with Penske. Maybe one day it'll be Penske Haas Porsche F1. Bit of a mouthful. Andretti Cadillac. I reckon if there is going to be an 11th team on the Formula 1 grid, then chances are it will be Andretti Cadillac. Andretti have moved into a lot of different motorsports recently, from their roots in IndyCar to endurance racing and Extreme E amongst others. Formula 1 would just be another string in their bow, and joining with GM-owned Cadillac? Genius. There's your money right there. And with F1 desperately trying to break into America, an American brand joining the grid would surely be a joy. The FIA are definitely in favour. The current teams are not, and the greedy sods should be ignored. They talk about the sport being diluted, but what they mean is prize money would have to be shared further, and the experience of Andretti with the resources of GM Motors, this team could be a threat by 2030. The top teams won't want that to happen. Ignore the teams and get Andretti on the grid. Ford. This, by the sounds of current rumours, is almost certain to happen. Ford have apparently made a deal with Red Bull. Ironic, as it was the Ford-owned and powered disaster that was the Jaguar team that Red Bull took over in 2005. It may not seem like it, but Ford are one of the most successful brands in motorsport. They've won Le Mans, dominated touring cars all over the world. They are also the third most successful engine provider in F1 history behind Ferrari and Mercedes. Ford-powered cars have won 176 Formula 1 Grand Prix over the years, but Ford have been missing since 2013 when they powered their Marussias to 0 points. Ford are a capable unit though, so I can see a return being likely, not as a new team, but as an engine provider. Pantera Asia. These teams get less likely the further you go down the grid, but Pantera Asia have been pushing for this since 2019. Much like America, the FIA want more Asia money, and so an Asian team would be good for the brand. Owner Benjamin Durand has money behind him, and there is apparently manufacturer interest. They've already had a rocky time of things, initially announcing they wanted to be on the 2022 grid. They lost investors during COVID and have had to recover a bit. But the aim is now 2026. But there is still a lot of mystery surrounding this team. Maybe an Asian entry into Formula 1 is possible. Guan Yu Zhou would be a top choice of driver, I'm sure. Calvin Lowe. Another Asian businessman who has expressed interest in a Formula One team is Hong Kong-based Canadian billionaire Calvin Lowe. He is a financier who has expressed interest in starting a Formula One team. He has also been linked to the Pantera Asia team, and I think that would be a more realistic outcome than Calvin Lowe striking out on his own. He has the money, but I get Theodore Racing vibes from the man. If you don't know about Theodore Racing, they had a billionaire owner who only provided the bare minimum money for the team and mostly used it as a tool to pick up chicks. Mostly prostitutes, apparently. If Calvin Lowe joins the grid, then I think he'll be as an investor, either in Pantera if they can get on the grid, or maybe the Williams team, who are always on the lookout for a fresh source of dosh. Stellantis/Lancia. I'm surprised I haven't seen more rumours regarding the Stellantis group entering Formula One. They've begun putting brands in other formula, such as DS and Maserati in Formula E. They own a whole host of brands. Stellantis was formed after a merger between the PSA Group and Fiat Chrysler. Now 20 or so brands fall under their banner. The one I'd like to see most is Lancia, obviously. They had a brief time in Formula One in the 50s, and is a name any motorsport fan would love to see come back into existence. Fiat, Chrysler, Peugeot, Dodge, Opel, hell, even Jeep are names owned by Stellantis, and any could be a Formula One team. Lotus. One of the most successful names in Formula One history. The death of Lotus in 1994 was a genuinely sad moment for Formula One and the end of an era in many ways. They've returned in a variety of guises since. Team Lotus in 2010, the really bad Tony Fernandez effort that got changed pretty quickly. Then Renault changed to Lotus solely as a middle finger to Tony Fernandez. The black and gold livery even made an appearance on the Haas team during their embarrassing Rich Energy debacle. As a manufacturer, Lotus have been pushing carbon-free electric vehicles, and F1 will fit their brand image. Along with their rich history, Lotus will be welcomed back with open arms by fans of Formula One. The world should unite and make this happen. Honda. Like an indecisive depressive on the edge of a building, Honda can't decide whether or not to jump. This would be the 8,000th time Honda have joined Formula One? Why didn't they just stay with Red Bull? They'd have won another championship in 2022. They were a team in the 1960s, they aborted an attempt to join the grid in the 90s, and had a brief time in Formula One in the mid-2000s. Not to mention all the times they have been an engine manufacturer. I would be against Honda joining the grid. As soon as things get hard, they get cold feet and flee. They will never be a stable entry, not whilst they have that attitude. Honda really needs some grit and actually try for a sustained entry for a change. Tesla. Elon Musk seems to be everywhere these days. The new boss of Twitter owns a car brand amongst a million other things. A Formula One team is not out of the realms of possibility, but Tesla have not had too much to do with motorsport, and that doesn't seem to be changing. He has the money and expertise to make this happen, and a Twitter-sponsored Tesla F1 car could have an interesting livery and bring about great memes. It's about time we saw the Tesla name in the realm of motorsport, so why not? Or just call it Musk F1. SMP Racing. Finally, SMP Racing, a team that has had a lot of success in endurance racing and definitely has the technical ability to enter Formula One. It may be more of a money issue. They would need investment. With a lot of manufacturers bouncing around, signing up for a joint entry is not impossible. But of all the teams listed here, SMP would be the ones to worry about going all HRT up in F1. They also have Russian links, which is not in vogue right now, but they are an experienced race team. There have been worse teams to attempt Formula One. So let's have a quick guess at a possible grid for 2026. Red Bull and AlphaTauri Fords, Mercedes and Ferrari as is, Alpine will probably revert back to Renault at some point, Aston Martin will be as is, McLaren Porsche maybe, Williams Honda with some kind of Calvin Lowe investment fund as sponsor, Haas with some manufacturer backing from Stellantis to keep things fresh, Audi, Andretti, and screw it, let's roll the dice on a 12th team and say Lotus 2, more hope than anything. Maybe some kind of incestuous SMP Tesla Pantera team just to get all of these entries on the grid. So once again, Formula 1 could return to a 26 car grid. It won't, and a lot can happen in 3 years. Half of these teams could go bust like US F1. So there are some of the possible future F1 teams. Are some of these incredibly unlikely? Absolutely. But I say, let's get them all on the grid. Bring back pre-qualifying if you have to. More cars, more drivers, the better the racing will be. More cars on the track means more things happening, and that is a problem Formula 1 is yet to solve. Let me know which you think will make the grid in 2026, and which you would like to see on the grid. Any other fantasy entries you can think of? I'd love Lamborghini to make a return, but given Volkswagen are putting Porsche and Audi on the block, very unlikely. Also Brabham, they've returned to GT racing, so it would be nice to see them back in F1 where they belong. Also Vanwall. Thank you for watching, subscribe. Maybe there'll be a Frontrunner F1 team in the future. Have a good one.